I guess that kind of segues into the not so great parts of this movie. Superman, I've never been the biggest fan of Superman. I mean, I like watching him fight in the animated series and the Justice League series, but I don't know, just he's always been kind of boring to me. I only really like seeing him fight big enemies that he actually has to struggle against, like Darkseid and sometimes Doomsday. Just when he's not fighting them, I just feel like he's not a very interesting character. Characters are become their most interesting when they're challenged, when they have to overcome an obstacle. And I know Superman's thing is that he can go over any obstacle. That's his thing. But that just kind of makes the character very boring, kind of bland. Again, when he is put up against an opponent that he can't beat that easily, like Darkseid, that fight's kind of interesting, because you actually see him getting challenged. But pretty much everything else, it's just not all that interesting to watch him fight, or really do anything. And the Superman they got for this movie, I just don't really like this actor. I think his name is Henry Cavill. Just, he seemed very wooden, and his interactions with Batman, just, you could tell that Ben Affleck was just a far superior actor. Just, I don't know, I kind of felt that with Clark Kent and Superman were just a bit subpar in almost every aspect. Now, the fighting that Superman does was pretty good, I think. But aside from that, just, I don't know, he seemed a bit boring and kind of bland overall. Not overly bad, I guess, just not up to what I would want, I guess. I would want to see him be pushed a little more. I want to see him actually affected by the events that went on. I never really felt like Clark Kent or Superman was really impacted by what happened in Man of Steel. It was told to me that he was, but I never felt it in the expressions on Superman or Clark Kent's face, or in his interaction with other people. One other thing is that I never truly believed why Superman had a problem with Batman. That part of the movie seemed fairly rushed. There was the hint of, like, that Clark Kent wanted to show people that Batman wasn't a good guy, but was that enough to tell Batman that to bury his cowl? Was that? It just didn't seem like he had enough there to really warrant him wanting to go after him like that. Batman had the perfect excuse to go after Superman, but Superman just, it didn't feel natural, which is one reason why I was okay with the circumstances of their fight. Like, Superman was never actually going to go after Batman, but because Lex Luthor captured his mother and basically forced him to, I felt like, given the circumstances, it worked. I didn't like that it was on a timer, so it was short. So it was like, it was made to be short. I didn't really like that aspect, but the fight and the motives of the fight overall made sense. Now, with that out of the way, let me talk about the stuff that was just downright awful. Oh, actually, one thing that wasn't bad. The introduction of the Justice League, the rest of the Justice League, I felt like that wasn't awful. It could have been done. It could have been done a slightly better way, better than just an email to Wonder Woman. I felt like one person I saw made a good point. It would have been better if in the scene where Batman infiltrated LexCorp and stole their kryptonite, I wish they had shown that scene, but maybe it'll be in the extended cut. I don't know. it would have been cool if Batman actually saw those clips going on the screen. Maybe show them all at once, you know? That way you wouldn't have to devote like a 5-minute scene to show them right before you fight Doomsday. I felt like it was a little out of place and also just a bit rushed, I guess. I just didn't really see that big of a reason. Like, you could have shown that Wonder Woman got those emails, but it just didn't feel as organic, I guess, as Batman going into LexCorp and actually seeing them himself. I don't know. But as far as the cameos themselves go, they were fine. Except for Aquaman's. Like, I liked watching the character just kind of move around. But the scene lasted a bit too long, and he didn't... I just kind of wish that the scene had been more like... It was underwater, and, like, Aquaman kind of swam by real quick. And then it showed a freeze frame of him, like, looking at the screen or something with his trident. I felt like that would have been a little better than him kind of slowly crawling out of a hole and kind of moving slowly, thrusting his spear or trident at the camera and then zooming off. I felt like that was just a bit awkward. But the other two, the Flash and Cyborg cameos, they were fine. I'm still not sold on, what's his name, Ezra Miller? Something like that, the Flash actor. I'm not entirely sold on his interpretation of Flash, but I'll have to see him in the costume fully before I make my judgment. Now, I'm going to go into the stuff that's just downright awful. Lois Lane. Lois Lane in this movie, I can't think of a single time that she did anything good. Like, the only reason that Superman was framed at the beginning for destroying that village was because Lois Lane was there. If she wasn't there, Superman wouldn't have done that. The only reason Superman died in the end was because Lois Lane dropped the spear in the water for some reason. I don't even know where that water came from. It's just kind of there. And then Lois Lane went down to get it, but she got trapped. Of course she did. Then Superman had to go save her. Just... She just didn't really... It was just kind of... What am I trying to say? The movie had a very hard time trying to make her relevant and to make us care about her, which in turn made her just another damsel in distress. Oh yeah, she got pushed off the building again, which made Superman go there. Like, if just everything she does, pretty much everything she does, just ended up in Superman getting harmed. That's not good character writing. I just didn't like how they did her. She was probably my least favorite part of this movie. If she hadn't been involved in the climax, I feel like it would have been a much stronger movie. But because she got trapped, because Superman had to go save her, interrupting the main fight of the movie, mind you, just so Superman could go save her, because of something she did. If she hadn't, why did she drop the spear in the water in the first place? Where'd that water even come from? I don't know. She could have been portrayed a bit better. That's all. Now, the second least favorite thing about this movie is Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. I'm sorry, Lex Luthor Jr. Yeah, because that was totally the plan from the beginning, to make him Lex Luthor Jr. Okay. I was surprised more people... Sorry. I was surprised more people weren't complaining about Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor than they were Ben Affleck. Because at least Ben Affleck looked like Batman. Jesse Eisenberg, he's scrawny. He has horrible long orange hair. Yes, technically Lex Luthor and Lex Luthor Jr. did have long orange hair at one point. But it just didn't look good on on his head. And when he was shaved, it still didn't look like Lex Luthor. I just couldn't see it. And Lex Luthor is supposed to be this like intimidating businessman, but not in the way Jesse Eisenberg portrayed him. He portrayed him as crazy, as just weird, as psychotic. And one thing that really bugged me is that he basically took the place of what Joker should have been in this movie. If Joker had been in this movie, it basically would have taken the place of Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor would have been completely irrelevant. Because they play very similar roles. They're both crazy. They both talk a lot. They're both intimidating just because of just what they say, not necessarily how they say it. Which isn't really Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is supposed to be very what's the word? Supposed to be a very, very buff. Not super buff, but at least kind of buff, which Jesse Eisenberg is not. He'll be very formal in his talking, not very profound, and just say all these words that he was kind of saying stuff, but it just never really made a lot of sense, I guess. But that's the Lex Luthor we have. I just can't really picture him going up against Superman in the big kryptonite in the big kryptonite body armor. I just can't really see it ever happening. And I was kind of hoping that in this world, this Lex Luthor would be the Luthor that ran for president in order to frame Superman. I felt like that would have been a much better direction to go with this character, but no, they went the psychotic maniac who wanted to kill God and just what? That's your motivation? You hate God because your dad beat you? By the way, what happened to Lex Luthor Sr.? You can just tell that Lex Luthor was not supposed to be Lex Luthor Jr. in this movie because of the fact that Lex Luthor Sr. just kind of written off. They didn't even explain what happened to him. You can just tell they put that in the script late in production. You could have taken out the parts with, oh, my dad did this, and it would have been the same movie. One thing me and my brother discussed is that it would have been cool if Lex Luthor Sr. had actually died in the Battle of Metropolis in Man of Steel. That would have given Lex Luthor an actual motive to try to kill Superman. Otherwise, we don't really have a motive for him to destroy him other than he hates God, and Superman is the closest thing to God, and it just didn't feel natural. Whatever. So, oh, right. Something else that was not done very well. You know how I said everything involving Batman was done really well? Well, that's not entirely true. The dream sequences in this movie, they didn't need to be there in this movie. So the first one, I don't know what exactly it was. So the first one, Batman's walking to his parents' grave. He puts flowers down, and then these things come out of the rock. They looked almost like mutant bats, kind of like Man-Bat, but smaller, and there's a lot of them. I don't really understand what that vision meant. It just didn't really... It doesn't really make sense in the context of this movie, and it didn't even try to set up something like the other two did. Other two dream sequences did. Maybe it was talking about his inner demons coming after him, but they could have... I just felt like that scene didn't need to be in this movie or really any movie. the other two dream sequences, I saw what they were going for. They did that in order to set up the next movie, the Justice League movies and whatnot, because the fight in the desert with the parademons flying down with the Darkseid's Omega thing in the sand. Obviously, it was setting up either like a possible future or an alternate dimension where Darkseid had taken over the world and he had Superman under his control, or something like that. It didn't need to be in this movie, though. It didn't add anything. Like, the movie would have been perfectly fine without any of these visions. And especially without the third one. The one with, apparently, it's Flash coming from the future to tell him something. That Lois Lane's the key, you were right about him. Was that pertaining to Doomsday? Was that pertaining to Superman? Or are you talking about Darkseid? And clearly that's apparently that is Flash from the future telling him this, but it didn't need to be in this movie. That could have very easily, both of those dream sequences could have very easily been in the Justice League movie, and they would have fit just fine, I feel. But no, they're in this one, and they didn't really connect to anything in the actual story. I don't know. Oh, another thing about Batman is that I was actually fine with him killing. It didn't show it directly, and the only time he did kill directly was in the dream sequences, which I feel like those are different circumstances. So him inadvertently killing people, I felt it was fine. I feel like it would have been much better if they had a scene showing that, like, after Joker killed Jason Todd, or a Robin, whichever Robin it is, probably Jason Todd. After Joker killed a Robin, that is what pushed Batman over the edge to actually kill people to stop crime. And the only reason Joker's alive is because he's either locked up in Arkham or just somewhere where Batman can't get him. I feel like that would have been a much better way to flesh out the fact that he actually kills people in this movie. It's fine. Like, I didn't mind seeing it, I guess. It also allowed him to be more brutal in his action scene towards the end. I'm fine with it. In a standalone Batman movie, I feel like they're going to retcon that and make it that he doesn't actually kill people directly. But even if he does, I'll be fine. I'll be perfectly fine with it. So, again, overall, I would not call this a good movie. However, I would call this a very enjoyable movie. I forgot to say that at first, but, like, this was one of the most entertaining movies I've seen in a long time. Just, for everything that was bad about it, it was kind of to the point of so bad it's good. So it was enjoyable. Like, I was able to laugh at the fact that Lois Lane was the root of all these problems. I was able to laugh at the fact that Lex Luthor was so terrible. And just everything was enjoyable. But it was definitely, overall, it was definitely not a good movie. Again, there were many good aspects, but the bad, I feel, outweighed the good in almost all cases. I feel like if they had left out the majority of the Justice League stuff of this movie and left out the dream sequences, had a more coherent reason for Batman and Superman to actually fight, have a better motive for Lex Luthor to make them fight, and have Lex Luthor more involved in the Batman aspect of them fighting. Lex Luthor talked at some point in the movie about them working together. It would have been interesting to actually see them working together to fight Superman, because I feel like they almost had to have been, because Lex Luthor and Batman both planned on the Batman-Superman fight happening on the same night. If they had worked together, I think that would have been something that was really cool. But they didn't. Oh well. I am really excited for all the standalone movies. The Justice League movie coming out next year, I hope next year. Actually, in a way, I kind of hope it's not next year. I kind of hope it's 2018. Then again, that would be the same year as the third Avengers movie. So maybe not in the same year as that. But if they can get it out next year, fine. As long as it's not rushed. After seeing this movie, I'll give Zack Snyder one more. Overall, this movie was fine. I felt like the casting could have been better. Some of the story could have been a bit more fleshed out and a little more coherent. But overall, it was fine. I don't completely trust Zack Snyder to do the Justice League movie justice. But I would trust him to do it if he had a better writer and a co-director. Like if Ben Affleck kind of gave him pointers as the movie was happening, because he's actually a pretty good director at this point. He just hasn't like completely he's not completely comfortable with superhero movies. And if like he's giving Zack Snyder pointers and Zack Snyder's giving Ben Affleck pointers as the movie's happening, I feel like they could pull this off. I would prefer if it was a different director personally. I don't know who, but just a director just to get new blood in there, just to have a new take on these characters. Because Zack Snyder set it up pretty well. I just would enjoy someone else finishing it, but if Zack Snyder's all we got, that's all we got. It's fine. I've accepted it at this point. So yeah, I'm very excited for the future, especially the standalone Flash, Wonder Woman, even Batman. I mean, especially the Cyborg movie. I'm very curious of who the villain's going to be for that one. We'll just have to see. So yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, and I very much encourage you to go see it before especially before the Justice League movie, because you're going to want to see that. I almost guarantee it. Overall, I would probably give this movie a 6, maybe 7 at the most out of 10. It, like I said, it wasn't good, but it wasn't awful. It was very, very enjoyable. One of the most enjoyable movies I've seen in a long time. So, yeah, I'll see you later. Bye. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to really touch on. Superman died. Yeah, that was honestly kind of surprising. Now, in the comics, of course, Superman didn't stay dead. He came back, I think it was 2 years later. After Doomsday killed him, he came back. And they're going to do something like that in the movie. I think in the first Justice League movie, is going to be more so about Batman and Wonder Woman rounding up the Justice League and then fighting off maybe Steppenwolf or some other apocalyptic threat. And then at the end of the movie, Superman is going to come back to life. Because at the end of this movie, it was very vague. It was left open to interpretation. But you could see like the dirt on the coffin like kind of rising. So you could tell he's not actually dead. I was actually surprised. I thought at the end of the movie he was gonna just come out and just be alive, but whatever, he's not. So I'm actually interested in how they're gonna do the first Justice League movie without him. I actually kind of appreciate them doing that because, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of this Superman. Plus, I feel like he wouldn't really get along that well with the other Justice League characters. Whereas, ironically, this Batman would. Which is kind of weird considering Batman's usually the one who's like only a part-time member and doesn't like interacting with the others. This time, Batman actually is the one leading the Justice League. Leading the formation of it. Which I think is a very interesting take, and I actually like this. Of course, Superman's going to come back for the second one. They already have a Man of Steel 2 planned. So, yeah, he's going to come back. But I do appreciate the fact that they're doing something very different with this adaptation. So, yeah, I think that's it this time. So, see ya.